Hey everyone, my name's Josh Bryan, and today I'm going to talk to you about the expectancy violation theory and all that it entails and my experience with it. So to sum this theory up, it basically has to do with all the nonverbal messages we're sending. So this is body language and what we're doing with our hands, let's say. It can also include how we talk with people and how far away we are from them, whether we're really close to someone as we're talking or whether we're really far apart, and it basically helps us understand the effects on how we're conversating. So not necessarily what we're saying, which are two different things. I think that we're all familiar with the saying, it's not what you say, but how you say it. Judy Burgoon is a professor of communication, family studies, and human development, and she was the one that really researched this theory and discovered this theory. And she's also authored and edited over 14 books and over 300 articles, and has many prestigious awards on top of that. So the conflict that I had was with my roommate, and it was really actually pretty unique, I feel like, because we started out as really good friends at the start of the year. Me and him did a lot of stuff together, and went hiking, went swimming together, hung out with the same people, and it was really pretty fun. But eventually we all had conflict as roommates go, and one conflict led into more conflicts and disagreements, one after another, and it seemed like it rarely happened, then it happened every month, then every week, then every day. So we distanced away from each other. Some of these conflicts had to do with, let's say, dishes, which is a really common roommate disagreement, and others had to deal with where we were putting our stuff in the apartment, whether it was a jacket on the back of a chair, or whether it was shoes in front of the doorway, or whatever it might be. There were quite a few conflicts of the sort like that that made me think about this theory. So to analyze my conflict using this theory basically comes down to two competing needs: a need for an affiliation and also a need for personal space. Both of those have its place in our lives, and with it, the affiliation need seemed to come first in college, as we both didn't know anyone up at college and we wanted to be affiliated and uh, feel like we have a social circle of friends where we could go and talk. And then we also have a need for personal space, which is just that own little bubble, our own alone time. And as we became closer and closer friends with each other, we also wanted our own personal space. And so it was really complicated and really hard to be able to share and find the right balance of affiliation and also personal space. And this triggered what the book calls a low versus a high threat threshold. Both of us were probably a bit more on the personal space side, and we both had a pretty low threat threshold, which meant that we liked our own personal space and we didn't really like people being in our bubble. Versus someone that has a high threat threshold, which is someone you could say that is a hugger, or that really doesn't have much of a bubble, that's always pretty close to someone. And so with that low threat threshold, we have what are called territories, and we always left our stuff around the apartment. Sometimes it was a jacket on the back of a chair, for example. And for what I might have seen as a public territory where you don't put things, such as a jacket on the back of a chair, he saw it as his own territory, as a secondary territory for him. And vice versa. It might have been my shoes on the floor in the living room, or anything else of the sort, backpacks, or where food goes, or dishes. We saw those as different territories for each other, and we didn't agree with the other person's territories, and which triggered our low threshold yet again. So my recommendations by using this theory and to help me and my roommate come to a better understanding would be to first truly understand what a personal space is and how it automatically shrinks when you move into a dorm. I think that we both liked our own space, our own areas, and it was hard for us both to adjust to how small a dorm can actually be, especially when there's 4 or 5 other guys living with you, and you don't really necessarily have much elbow room in the kitchen or on the table or wherever you might personally like it. And so you need to understand that, but then also you need to recognize it and also respect it, and know that it takes compromise to live with others, and not everything is going to go your way. So if you understand what their personal space is and recognize it and respect it, and then if there isn't something that you agree with, we can communicate about it clearly. We can communicate about it openly and see what needs to change, and hopefully we can come to a compromise of what would be best for us both. To sum this theory up and to conclude this presentation, I want to get the point across that this theory can help us make great connections with people. It says that in the book. It can help us make great connections in the sense of how we act around others can influence them, whether they feel comfortable around us. But it's also important to note that with this theory, it can help destroy, in a sense, our relationships with others, just like how it destroyed my friendship with my one roommate. This theory can do either if we let it. I also want to put the point across that first impressions are important, especially with this theory, that how we stand, how we talk with people, how we use our hands, and what emphasis we use all goes around for our conversation. It might not be what we're saying, but it helps us make an impression on others. And it's also important to note that continuing to make an impression is just as important, as we saw with my roommate. And then the third thing to note is that everyone has a different expectation for how we act and how we use our hands and how we emphasize things. But we still need to be ourselves. I think that that's the most important thing at the end of the day, is that people may not understand, and you might violate their expectations of what you're doing, but it's important to be yourself and know and recognize and understand that everyone has a different expectation, including yourself. And so we should be generous and courteous to those that may not think the same way that we do.